Welcome, everyone, to episode 326 of Dial the Gate, the Stargate Oral History Project. My name is David Reed, and I appreciate you tuning in for this live episode where we are talking with William DeVry. He's going to be joining me in just a few seconds. If you have questions and you are in the live chat on YouTube, I have a team of moderators standing by ready to take those incoming questions, and they will get them over to me. But let's not keep him waiting any longer. William Aldwin and Stargate SG-1, 3 seasons, sir. Welcome to Dial the Gate. How are you, sir?
Very well, thank you. Yeah, it was. Although it may have been 3 seasons, it felt very brief.
For sure, absolutely, and gone too soon. But we will get there in a jiffy. How are things going in your world, and what's going on?
Well, our world is going through a little bit of a moment of contraction and rediscovery.
Yeah.
So we all have to be patient and know that this too shall pass. The auditions are frequent, which is good, but everybody's available right now in Hollywood and across the world. There's just not enough work for everybody right now. So the contraction is real, 60%.
Yeah.
But everybody's that's available is a discount right now. So I've got a partner, and we're starting to produce. We're starting to pitch shows, features. Got about 4 series, 6 features, 1 MOW, and it's an interesting time because I think when you start these new ventures, I think as human beings, you have a tendency to go to what's familiar, people that you know already. And I'm not, it's still not clear to me if that's the right choice. I think you have to go outside your comfort zone and go to people that in a million years you never thought you'd be sitting across the desk from or sitting across the coffee table from. And I think that's where I'm, kind of at right now, pitching with people that 2 months ago I never thought it would even dream of being a possibility, much less a reality. So here we are. It's been an adjustment, but I'm pretty proud of the way I've been able to take it in stride. And everything's for a reason. And
yeah, I believe that.
There's a lot of us in this business who have really had really good runs. So I've got nothing to complain about. It's just I've got more of a story to tell. And, for 35 years, I was able to just get hired job after job. So this is really an interesting part of my career that's just a bit of adversity. And rather than slipping back into a comfort zone, I'm like, you know what, let's try to advance things and go somewhere where, I didn't think possible maybe last year.
Yeah.
2 years ago or 3 years is whatever it is. So instead of slipping back into a familiar spot that I've been in, I think it's, for me, I'll be happier moving forward and not backwards or staying still. So it's been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot, and I'm just at a point where I'm just like super happy about where things are, leading.
I'm glad to hear it. I remember having conversations 2 and 3 years back with the strikes and everything else, and I'm on the record on this channel saying this industry is going to be cut in half when this is all said and done. I remember saying that, and here it is, and it's like, oof. And now with the geometric acceleration of AI, it's like, leave some room for the humans.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting. 5 years, and that's really not, that's just one tiny slice of it. We've gone through a couple of reckonings even before COVID, and we've gone through some corrections in different ways, all of which I'm for. They've been difficult for me personally, but I think overall it will lead us to a better place. But I've had to make peace with a few things. And then besides COVID, and the strikes, the contractions, everybody's scared right now. Nobody wants to put any money towards anything. So I was reading an interesting article this morning about Nate Bargatze, how everything's kind of niche. You need a genre. There's not really much in the way of something for everybody like there used to be. And he gave a bunch of examples of movies that people go back to time and time again for decades that the whole family can watch. And that's obviously more what he's interested in. And, he was talking about how Succession, everybody allegedly has watched Succession, but, really at the end of the day, only 3 million people watched Succession, even though they were loyalists. He's like, well, that's not really a big number. I want more of the family where everybody sits in front of the TV. I'm looking for 10, 12 million people because he believes that can happen again. I think we've gone to such a degree that people don't believe that families don't watch TV together because they're all on their phones. But he's also saying, but you aren't giving them something to watch right now. You aren't giving family wants to watch. It's not that you can't do it. It's just you're not doing it. You don't think it's there when it is. So I like where he's coming from. I sort of enjoyed that. It was a big article today on Yahoo. And it was quite it was a long read for most people. They like things over in 30 seconds these days.
Exactly.
But kind of his point. That was kind of his point, and I really enjoyed the article. So the comedian we're talking about, the comedian Nate Bargatze.
Yeah, no, he's right here. I hope that he's right. Oh yeah.
What's that?
I hope that he's right. 12 million though. We're awfully atomized. You can get probably 12 million families to sit in a room together. I just don't know if they'll all be watching.
Well, to his point, I think he's trying to build on I guess his Netflix special or whatever, brought in 5 million people. So he just thinks that the audience is there if you do give them something. So, listen, we all like to have a pie in the sky idea of what we're capable of. But, he was kind of hearkening back to, Walt Disney was originally run by a guy that really cared about the product and cared about the families, and everything was so personal to him. And now it's just run by, a guy
Suits.
that's basically, the suits, money pinchers. And, so I found a really inspiring article, actually. And when you think about it, he's really came along into his own like 2 years ago. The article said that just 2 years ago in October of 23, when he did the SNL, the number one search was, who is Nate Bargatze?
People can come up really fast. They can get taken out even quicker in terms of the cultural zeitgeist. But I think that he's right about things that the family can enjoy. And that's where I first saw you originally. This is a very important show to me. It was not always written the best, but I didn't care. I loved it. And the first time I saw you was on seaQuest. Tell me about that show, anything you remember, and getting to know Peter DeLuise.
Yeah, well, that's where it all sort of started for me. People ask, how'd you get involved in acting? Well, I never thought I was going to be an actor. And in fact, I'm quite grateful that I started out going to college for business. And, I thought I was going to be a big real estate guy, which when I became a young actor, I did some real estate, as an investment tool for those dark days. But I took some acting classes in Orlando. And, didn't really think much of it, but did a workshop. Agents approached me, auditions started coming in. And as people may not realize, but back in the early 90s, Florida was an up and coming spot. We had, which is big today, tax breaks and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So seaQuest DSV had its first year run in Los Angeles, and Orlando offered them a sweetheart deal. They went to Orlando, and the whole everybody came. And the season premiere of season 2, Brian Spicer directed, who went on to do a great many things, including Y50 and NCIS Hawaii. In fact, he's up and left LA and just settled into Hawaii. Just loves it there.
Wow.
But anyway. Um, everybody auditioned for this, like everybody, for seaQuest DSV. It was a big thing. And casting director, I remember I got done with my audition, and it was one of those times where I I haven't really told this story before, but I was sitting in my apartment with my buddy, and we both put ourselves on tape, so we could watch it on the VHS like 100 times. And I did it until I believed what I was watching, and I was no longer watching myself. I believed what I was, the character. All of a sudden, there's kind of a difference. People say, "Oh, do you like watching yourself?" Well, not particularly, but hopefully, if I'm doing my job, I feel like I'm not really watching myself, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I did these VHS tapes, and then we went in to read for the casting director, and we got done, and he sort of like became really silent. And I wish I could remember his name off the top of my head. It was a black gentleman, but a credit to his casting directors for sure. But he kind of stared at me like, "Man, I've been waiting all day for this kind of thing,"
Ah.
And so they put me forward, and Brian flew out. We had a call back, and it was a great experience reading with Brian Spicer. And then we got the call a couple days later, and it was kind of a dream, like you're basically your first job. We shot a lot of it in St. Petersburg.
Hmm.
And stayed at the hotel out there on St. Petersburg Beach, and at the studio in Orlando at Universal. And Peter and I became friendly. And he said, we were talking, and I said, "Well, I'm originally from Montreal, and I'm, even though I'm American, my mother took me straight to the American consulate when I was born in Montreal because she's American."
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "Well, you should. There's a lot of stuff. Of course, Peter had done 21 Jump Street with Johnny Depp up in Vancouver." And so he said, "Well, you should go to Vancouver. I've got an agent up there, Deb Dillistone, who is a big agent still to this day, for that matter." And and he says, "Oh, before I call Deb and let her know you're coming," he goes, "How do you say SORRY?" And I said, "Sorry?" And he goes, "Oh, okay, you're good to go." Fully expect me to say sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah. So now I bet, he's been up there so long. I bet you he says sorry now.
Probably.
But so yeah, I literally, we shot that in August. It premiered in October. By November 1st, I was gone. I left Florida, again, just packed my Jeep and I went to California first. I was there stayed with a friend for about 2 weeks, and I just realized that, man, this is just, you can get lost in this town quick. And, it was like hard to find somewhere to study, much less getting an agent,
it can really subsume you out there if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah. And especially, if you're an impressionable young actor and you don't really know what you're doing, and, all of a sudden the car that you drive or where you live and the zip code becomes important to you more than the process. And so I was like, man, I better hightail it out of here. And, I met some good people, small community in Vancouver back then. I arrived there November 26th of 1994. And got into some good classes. And at the time I was studying with Vonna Chubbuck, who, was taught Elizabeth Shue and Holly Berry and stuff like that. And it was a really good process for me just to really immerse myself, and started working right away. My first gig up there was with on Poltergeist, the TV series. That was my first gig up there.
Great show. I loved it. Another MGM property.
Great show. Yeah. Molly Parker was my fiance on the show. And, it's just like my first two gigs, like you're, young guy, and you're making, $10,000-$15,000. And I just thought, God, why doesn't everybody do this? Like,
Right.
and then, of course, at some point reality, comes in. But so Peter had gotten into directing, and I went in to read for Stargate at one point, and I did the audition, and I wasn't happy. And it was one of those moments where, it's not something you should do all the time, but I'm like, that wasn't really my work. I was trying to impress somebody rather than do my work. So I just went back. I asked, can I go? I'm going to go. I didn't ask for permission, actually. I said, I'm going to go back in. I need to do that again. And I said, Peter, I got to do that again. That wasn't me. That wasn't my work. And he goes, yeah, man, go ahead.
What do you think happened? What do you think happened the first time through? What was rattling around in your head that it wasn't an honest version of you?
Yeah, I don't specifically remember what was going through my head, but I do remember walking out of there going, "Oh, that wasn't my best work."
Okay.
Again, I think there's a difference between going into a room and try to impress somebody. Oh, let me jump through the hoops that I think they want me to jump through. And that can be really dangerous. And I think probably I fell in, that's a huge trap. I think I might have fallen into that trap. And so when I walked out, I go, man, that wasn't me. That was just a version of me trying to impress somebody, And so I went back in there and did what I wanted to do, which, sometimes when you take risks, I don't want to say that was a risk, but it was a risk. I don't want to say my choices were risks, but going back into the room and saying, instead of apologizing and just going, I'm coming back in and I'm doing that again, that's a risk. Yeah. I don't necessarily recommend that for every audition. You've got to be damn sure you know what you're doing and not just trying to, pretend like you can jump in the saddle and do this. But, you've got to know that you didn't do your work and now you're going to show them your work. And if you're sure of that, then yeah, take that risk. So I did it and I got the job and, it led to a recurring role for a few years. And, I don't remember a ton, to be honest. It was so long ago, but I remember being on sets. I remember, versions of it. I remember working with Peter and, of course, Michael and Shanks and I had auditioned for a lot of the same stuff. I mean, I auditioned for Daniel, we all did, but obviously he was perfect. I think at that time, he could be cool, but he could be kind of nerdy and he was a good actor, like he knew what he was doing and he knew what it took to be that actor. And I think he played it differently than James Spader did in the movie. But he was perfect for it. And, it's like, there's not very often where I'm envious of somebody for getting a job because when you look at their work and you go, yeah, man, that guy deserved it. And, Michael was one of those guys that deserved everything he got, which isn't always the case. But, it's nice when you audition for something and you go, I should have gotten that. And then you see the guy that got it, you go, oh, all right, that's cool. You're like, so it's, so that's what I mean. I'm not, I'm not an envious person because I can see, he worked his ass off and deserved it and deserved his run and, probably wanted to, do something different after 8 years, left for a couple of years and came back. And, so I get that, it's a struggle. This business is a struggle and you don't want to get too complacent, which is how I started this whole interview is just, complacency. And I learned that from some actors that I worked with over the years, don't get complacent, don't get comfortable with the paycheck.
Right.
Because you can easily get into a lifestyle that is, you're addicted to the lifestyle and now you're beholden to the lifestyle. You've basically made a deal with the devil. And so, that's, you got to be careful with that in this business.
You have to be, before you can start putting on the clothes of other characters, putting on their skin, it's probably a good idea to be really comfortable in your own first. Sounds like it's a lot of what you're saying. And be sure of what it is that you want and not what other people say that you should want.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, after I studied with Vaughn, I moved on to Larry Moss, a good friend of mine. Well, she wasn't a friend of mine at the time, but big actress by the name of Laurie Holden, who probably many people know from Walking Dead. She was Andrea the first 3 years in Walking Dead, and but she was my neighbor in Vancouver.
Mm.
But Laurie was very, sort of, I'm just tunnel vision, and as far as even walking down the street, like we didn't have phones back then, but she was just sort of like had her objective, and anything to the left or right was non-noticeable. But I knew she was, and she'd done X-Files and all that stuff, and she was a good actress. And one time I was on a plane, and we happened to be sitting together, and we talked the whole time. And the next day, she dragged me into Larry Moss's acting class that honestly saved my life, my career. But one of the things he said, to your point, was it's hard to be an actor. I come from a lot of, trauma, if you will. I didn't do drugs or drinking, or I never became an addict or anything like that. But that doesn't mean, that I didn't suffer a lot of trauma as a young man, young boy. But he's like, look, you cannot move forward unless you take responsibility for this trauma. And a lot of people don't take responsibility because they want to blame other people, right? It's never their responsibility. But it's a weird thing, taking responsibility for trauma that you experienced as a child. And you're like, you don't need to know how to take responsibility. You just need to be willing to take responsibility. Know that we all carry shit in our life, and we all carry trauma. But the second we just accept that, basically take responsibility for the fact that you can take responsibility for where you're going, you don't owe anybody anything, and that you need to do what you need to do. Mm-hmm. And you're only going to get, as you can't be somebody else. You have to be yourself, and you have to do what you want. Going into that room, you need to take responsibility, do what you want. And I think we spend, as an actors, again, we spend way too much time trying to figure out what they want. Mm-hmm. And I think, perfect example of that is watching a scene in one of Larry Moss's classes, and these very talented actors who fell into that trap. We're doing a scene, and he kind of stopped them after just a couple minutes, which he usually doesn't do, and he said, well, you're basically off base of what the play's about. And he goes, yeah, but they said, well, yeah, but Larry, we did it like 1,000 different ways, because these guys, that do Larry's class, they're in there, before they put it up, they're working for like a good solid 40 hours of doing this. They don't just like, oh, I'll do this the night before and put it up tomorrow.
They've been really drilling it.
They're drilling this model. Wow. And so they came in, and he stopped them, which is like totally, so disheartening. And but he stopped them, and he said, look, you're off. And they go, but Larry, we did it like 1,000 different ways. Well, what was genius about him is that, you did it, you tried it 1,000 different ways, but you didn't pick one. You need to pick one. And I remember one time separately to me, because I worked with him quite a lot alone, he said, it doesn't matter if you make the wrong choice. In fact, the director doesn't care if you make the wrong choice. He just wants to see you pick something. But if you commit to that one thing, that's better than 99.9% of the people that walked into that room that day. Because you picked something. May have been wrong, but you picked it, and you committed to it, and you put your shoulder into it. So then the director might go, God damn, that was totally wrong, but fuck, he committed to that. And so he goes, well, the director might go, do it this way. And if you can do it that way, it's because you did it 1,000 ways, but then you picked one when you went into the room. That's the difference.
Yeah, you can take direction, and you are moldable. They can work with you.
Yeah. As long as it's a collaborative effort, and you commit to it, that doesn't mean that you're not going to have disagreements with the director, because the director's job is to basically take what's on the page and what the actors have to say, and try to find a common ground between those two so he can tell a story. But I don't think actors get as much credit as they probably should for being a part of that collaborative effort, but at the same time, good directors don't get enough credit as well. So
I want to go back to Aldwyn. There are a couple of scenes that really stand out to me over the seasons. One of my favorite was there was a great sequence of scenes between you and Christopher Judge in an episode called "The Devil You Know."
Yeah.
Aldwin is representing the Tok'ra High Council on this mission. It's like, I'm in charge of this ship. This is our ship. This is Tok'ra's ship. This is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it. And Teal'c's like, if I agree.
Yeah.
And at one point, Aldwin's like, okay, we need to get out of here. Otherwise, we're all dead. And Teal'c's like, no, we're going to go down and rescue them. And we're going to get them out of there. And Teal'c locks him basically in the trunk of the car, the cargo hold of the cargo ship.
Yeah.
Do you remember anything about
those,
that day?
Yeah, I do remember those moments. And I remember Christopher well. He was quite the personality, big personality. I hope he's doing well. I haven't, seen him since I did that show. But yeah, I remember that show, but like I said, I don't remember a lot of stuff, but when you bring it up, I'm like, oh yeah, of course I remember that. But that was a lot of fun. I mean, that was, a good budget for the show. You felt like you were on a, in a story, book, environment. And, I was a big fan of Star Wars and, not a Trekkie, but I'm a Star Wars guy. So I loved all that kind of sci-fi stuff. I'm a real big fan of it. So it was such a dream to be on the show. I wish, it could have lasted longer, or Aldwyn could have stuck around longer. But, hey, I ended up getting my own baseball card out of it. So
hey, there you go. And I've got one. They're great. No, this character, the Tok'ra, they had a specific position to fill in the series, and a lot of the ones who were brought in to move the plot forward. It was a lot of exposition. There was a lot of technical stuff in there. Have you ever had an issue wrapping your head around the material, or do you just kind of jump in with both feet and go?
No, I think, exposition, as you said, there's your lead actors, and then there's some actors that are really brought in to do the exposition and move plots forward, fill in the gaps. And that's a hard job. I don't love it, but I love the challenge, and daytime, I obviously have some daytime experience. And I think some of that, exposition comes in the daytime, but it's again, it's a trap because you have to live that story that you're telling. You have to have experienced that. And that's where I think good storytellers come in to play. And I think that's the kind of guys that get hired. I know J.R. Bourne, pretty well. And, I think he's a wonderful storyteller. So I think that's important, is not just, yada, yada, yada. It's believing the story that you're telling that draws the audience in and makes us more interested in what's going to happen and what has happened. So yeah, it's a gift to be able to do that stuff.
There's a season 5 two-parter called Summit and Last Stand. The show has not been greenlit for season 6 on Sci-Fi yet. Showtime is nearing the end of its contract with MGM to produce SG-1. They had 4 seasons out of the gate and then a 5th very quickly. And a movie or some form of something like it is on the horizon for SG-1. And there's a big bad coming. His name is Anubis. And what the writers are doing is they're knocking off all of our allies left and right so that we will ultimately stand alone to face him. And the Tok'ra are almost completely wiped out in the process. And this culminates in a conflict on the surface and under the caves of Ravana, where we lose you. And I remember a very powerful scene. There's a stunt where it's kind of like one of those jumping stunts. Did you get to do that at all, or did you get to watch someone else do it for you? And what do you remember about your death?
Yeah, I don't remember much.
Okay.
I got to be honest with you. I don't. I generally try to do my own stunts, and I remember those well. So I'm not sure if I did that one. I'm gonna say 90% I didn't do my own stunt on that, because I just don't remember it. And I do remember vividly doing my own stunts. Let's see, I'm trying to remember if I did Nash Bridges before that, but I remember specifically being disappointed that they wouldn't allow me to get shot. I get shot at the end and I land on a table. And I guess that was, even though I felt like it was a small thing, being an athlete growing up, you want to do your own stunts. So
Yeah.
I probably, I don't even remember going in. Like I don't remember going in that day. Did we see my face at all? Like in that scene?
Turns around and he falls and breaks his neck. He falls on the top of his spine, and he turns around. The symbiote's eyes glow, and you're gone.
I'm gonna have to go back and revisit that and going,
Yeah.
oh man. All right. I may jog a memory that I just
Yeah, there was a hill. There was up a hill at one point. You guys were looking over into a pit where everyone's landing. I thought I sent you the episodes, but yeah, no, it was a good death, and it was a sad death. But hey, at least you have a beginning, middle, and end. You know how often on big shows like this.
Not everybody gets that. Yeah, maybe I was just pissed off that they were killing the character, and I chose not to remember. I honestly, that's so funny that I don't remember that. Because it was one of those jobs where you're always sad, where you're like you love going to work, and then it's ending. It's not a fun day. You can't, you're still going to go in there. I mean, there's nothing that drives me more crazy than actors that sort of refuse to play and give everybody a hard time because it's their last day and are kind of in a bad mood all day. That's not me. Like I'll be a professional to the end, but I just don't remember that scene at all.
Wow, you've wiped it. No, I don't blame you, especially when you're working with the likes of DeLuise and all of these amazing performers. There's a piece of yourself that gets left behind in the work, but at least you were there for it.
There was a gentleman on our show on Stargate that also did another show I did that started on General Hospital, and he said to me, he goes, "Yeah, I asked him about something." He goes, "I don't remember the '80s." He's joking, but probably not. So that, like, for me, the '80s or the '90s, even though I wasn't doing drugs or anything like that, I'm like, man, I can't remember that far back.
Was that Delancey? Oh man, no, it's some good stuff. I loved the character. I have a few fan questions for you, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Lockwatcher, you worked on a number of series, a number of different sets. Did Stargate compare at the higher end of some of the sets that you've worked on, or any challenges working within the set itself? The Tok'ra sets are one of the coolest, with all of the painted bales of hay and the crystalline structures. There was some cool stuff there.
Yeah, no, it was a great, the art direction there, the art set designer. Yeah, probably underrated for sure. But yeah, no, it was a great set to work on. It was a great show to work on. Yeah, I mean, it was one of the nicer sort of venues. Again, in the '90s, I feel like there was no object to it. Like, whatever you need to do to make this happen. I don't know, sometime in the last 6 years, where maybe 7 years, where money became like a big thing. Prices doubled and everything, like talking at ABC, they're like, yeah, I don't know, everything went from $5 million an episode to like, $12 million an episode, literally overnight somehow. I don't know, COVID or supply chains or, tariffs or strikes and wages. I have no idea, but that's part of the reason why we've gone from 22 episodes to 10, so money at some point became an object. But it didn't feel like that in the '90s, and Stargate definitely didn't feel like that to me as a young actor. So I appreciated that, and things have changed for sure since then.
Wow. Raj Luthra, did you get to sneak away any souvenirs from Stargate?
No, I'm not a big souvenir stealer.
Okay. Christian Unpronounceable. That's literally their handle. Stargate, at some point, Amazon is going to do something with the property. And who's to say if they're going to bring back some of the original people to work on it or not. But if you were tapped to return in some shape or form, not necessarily as the same role, would you be up for the challenge? Or is Stargate in the past?
Well, yeah, I think now, again, I'm not, trying to say I'm some big star that can make my own choices anymore, but I think I've just kind of come to a comfortable place in my life, separate from acting in my life, that I'd love to see what the challenge is. I'd certainly be opening to looking at it. And I mean, I remember Beauty and the Beast. I did Beauty and the Beast for WB. They killed me off. But then they called the next, I don't know, it was like 3 years later. And they were like, hey, what's your availability? So I was like, it didn't happen. But still, they were obviously thinking about, I might sneeze here.
Sure, you're fine. No, it's all right.
So they are obviously thinking about bringing back the character.
God bless you.
Thank you. Even though the character died. So, yeah, I mean, if Amazon was resurrecting the rights to Stargate and wanted to talk to me, which I doubt they would do, they wouldn't, they would just probably make me audition and go, wait a second, this guy was on, he did this show. He can't do this show now. But if they were to go trying to find a link between the old and the new, and I was one of their links, I would absolutely be open to looking at what they were proposing or what they were thinking about. Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I mean, again, there's a history to it will be everlasting. So why wouldn't you want to go back and at least be open to that?
At least take a look at the material, I mean, it's like, I wouldn't want to do it if it's like, I'm looking at this on the page, even if it's like an amazing series. I've done this before. I've done exactly this before, whatever the material is, I would feel as an artist like,
Yeah, I'd want to be challenged. I wouldn't want to do it just to do it. But then, of course, like if Scorsese called and said, you want to do this just to do this, I'd be like, of course. But, there's other situations where, if I'm going to do this, I want to be super challenged and feel like I'm going toe to toe with someone who, is the man, so that's just where I'm at now. I want to go toe to toe with people. I don't want to, spend my life doing the exposition.
No, for sure. That makes a lot of sense. And I suppose if someone, I know you were inspired by it creatively, said, hey, I'd like you to do this with me, and you'd not worked with them before, that could be something new as well. So.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. You mean if somebody that I hadn't worked before who approached me with a project that I admired? Absolutely. Yeah. And that's, I think where we all aspire to be. And, it can feel like, but to your point, I mean, but you've got to fight to get there. Like you've got to, again, it's like being obsessed with something without letting it take control of your life. I mean, how do you really achieve anything in life without a certain amount of obsession?
Yeah.
You got to have that. But then, of course, you got to be careful. You've got to be good with rejection. For me, it feeds me. I'm like Michael Jordan that way. If you say no, it's just like, I kind of take it personally, There's no reason why I shouldn't be going into the rooms with the best actors. I mean, I know that's kind of like, sounds a little bit douchey in a way, but I mean, you've got to have that belief in yourself that you deserve to be in the room. And, it doesn't make me mad, but I take it personally.
If it was unearned, I would agree. But if you know what's in your secret sauce and it's good stuff, people enjoy it, I agree. Absolutely.
Well, you want that opportunity, and if you feel like you've worked hard enough, then you deserve that opportunity, then good for you. What you should be going for that if that's what you think. I mean, nobody should discourage anybody from going anywhere if that's what they want to do, which unfortunately our world is full of discouraging people because, that's just, they feel more comfortable discouraging people from, going after their dreams.
Mm-hmm. Last question for you from Lockwatcher. Your great-grandfather founded DeVry University. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes, my great. Congratulations for getting the great part.
Yes,
Great-grandfather.
great grandfather, and invented many things. Any interesting stories about your great grandfather?
Well, I never met him.
Okay.
My mother loved him. In fact, I think she was closer to her great grandfather than she was her own father. He was just a super interesting guy and took an interest in people and had an interest in humanity and wanted to advance, our society forward and for the better and, sympathetic, empathetic, all the things that I think, again, we sort of lack in the world today. And not people talk about, lack of empathy and sympathy in Hollywood. I'm like, that's not true. There's a lot of great people in Hollywood, just like there is in the medical field or any other field or teaching. Or, there's some teachers that are, change your life, and then there's others that are like, discredit to their profession. So, uh, it's the same thing in Hollywood. So, thank you for the question. And yes, Herman DeVry. Yeah, Herman DeVry.
Did legacy come up a lot in your house? Or was
Pardon
it
me?
like, did legacy come up a lot in your house? Like
No,
what
it
you're
wasn't
leaving
a big,
behind?
yeah, no, it wasn't a big thing. I think that can be dangerous.
Yeah.
Just to a certain respect, it can be dangerous. It can, if you're not, it's a slippery slope to entitlement. Um,
Mm.
and Again, I think a lot of people fall into, it's another dangerous trap is entitlement. Just because I've made a living as an actor for 35 years doesn't mean anybody owes me for another job tomorrow. And that's kind of, that's kind of where I'm at. Like, you've got to, like, at some point, everybody's going to hit a point in their career or their life where you're just slamming your head against a wall. And it doesn't matter how talented you are or how deserving you are, but you cannot ever go to the entitlement because, first of all, it's ugly and it's gross, but it doesn't push you forward. It keeps you somewhere in the back and in the past. And so I think, legacy is a dangerous sort of word in a way.
Well, I appreciate your insight. I appreciate your thoughtfulness, and
This went by quick.
I know. Yeah, it tends to happen that way.
Yeah.
It meant a lot to have you, and I really appreciate you coming by and sharing some time with us.
David, you're a stand-up guy. Thank you for, keeping this show alive. And, it was a real nice surprise to hear from you via Peter DeLuise.
Ah,
And
Peter.
yeah, so, that was a good excuse to reach out to Peter again and touch base with him. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. There are a
Uh,
few. There are a few as good and true of heart as he and his brothers.
there's that you are right, and but again, it's not just Hollywood. I think every industry in our uh, universe, there's always a few good people, and he is definitely one of them. And thank you to him for really, jumpstarting, a path for me that still the carpet's still being rolled out today. So thank you.
We don't get through this alone.
No,
When we come across people who help shape our careers or help shape us personally, you never really forget them, and he's definitely one of them. So for sure,
very well said. Very well
absolutely.
said.
I'm going to wrap
Never.
up. You finished that.
Yep. No, I'm good. That was well said.
I'm going to wrap up the show on this side. Thank you again for stopping by.
David, thank you for having me.
It's a
Anytime.
pleasure. William DeVry, everyone, Aldwyn in Stargate SG-1. This is Dial the Gate. My name is David Reed. I appreciate you tuning in. We've got season 5 continuing to roll out over the next few weeks here. My tremendous thanks to my production team. But before I get to them, Dial the Gate is brought to you every week, pretty much, with the wonderful help from the people behind the scenes. If you want to see more content like this on YouTube, please click the like button. It does make a difference with the show and will continue to help us grow our audience. And please also consider sharing this video with a Stargate friend. And clips from this live stream will be released over the course of the next few weeks on both the Dial the Gate and GateWorld.net YouTube channels. Anthony Rowling, Kevin Weaver, Linda Gategabber Fury, my producers, thank you for making this show possible week after week, as well as my moderating team, Jeremy, Lockwatcher, Marsha, Raj, Anthony, Kevin. You guys make the show possible as well. I've got, I think, the next coming week is already mapped out on dialthegate.com. There's a couple of pre-recorded shows we're going to start to sneak in there, including one with French Stargate fans, which was a hoot. Don't shy away from it just because half of it's in French. It was fantastic and hilarious. So I will say no more about that. My name is David Reed. I appreciate you tuning in to Dial the Gate, and I will see you on the other side. All right, you won't see me anymore, sir. The credits are rolling, but thank you again. And all of my best to you for everything that you're going to continue to do, sir. It really means a lot to have you.